There is a woman in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, who is 67 years old, has raised 8 children, has worked outdoors most of her life, and does not own a single commercial moisturizer. Her skin is not perfect, but it does not look 67 either, and when her granddaughter asked her what she puts on her face, she laughed and said, "Nothing you can buy in a store." That answers exactly what we are going to talk about today. Before we go any further, subscribe if you have not already. What gets shared on this channel does not come from a dermatology office or a beauty brand. It comes from communities that have had no reason to change what works. That is a different kind of source, and if that matters to you, you should stay close. Now, let me tell you what this is actually about, because the title is not clickbait, and I want you to understand that in the first 2 minutes. The modern anti-aging industry in the United States is worth over $60 billion a year. $60 billion. And the women spending the most in that market are women over 50 who are also, by almost every measure, the least satisfied customers in it. That is not an accident. That is a business model. What I want to show you today is something different. It is not a product. It is a pattern. A daily practice rooted in the old order Amish communities of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and Holmes County, Ohio. Communities where women do not use commercial skincare, do not buy SPF serums, do not do chemical peels, and yet age in a way that consistently surprises the people who meet them. The methods I will be sharing are inspired by those traditional practices. And the more I have looked into the actual science behind them, the less surprised I am. Let me start with the timeline, because you deserve to understand how we got here. In 1938, the United States passed the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Before that, cosmetic companies could put almost anything on your skin and call it whatever they wanted. After 1938, the rules tightened, at least on paper. But there was a loophole, and the industry found it fast. If a product claimed to change your appearance, it was a cosmetic. If it claimed to change the structure or function of your skin, it was a drug, and drugs required clinical trials. So the industry did something elegant. It learned to promise beauty without promising biology. It learned to say looks younger and never say is younger. That distinction has governed $100 billion in marketing ever since. By the 1950s, petroleum-derived emollients, synthetic fragrances, and preservatives like parabens were standard in most American face creams. Not because they were proven superior to what women had used for generations. Because they were cheaper to manufacture at scale, had a longer shelf life, and created a dependency loop that plant-based and fat-based formulas did not, you had to keep buying. The product was designed to feel good, not to function. In 1972, the FDA began reviewing over-the-counter cosmetic ingredients through a panel called the Cosmetic Ingredient Review, which still operates today. What most women do not know is that this panel is funded by the Personal Care Products Council, which is the industry's own trade association. The panel has reviewed thousands of ingredients. It has declared the vast majority of them safe, and it has no enforcement power. The FDA does not have to agree with its conclusions, and companies do not have to follow its recommendations. It is an advisory body paid for by the people it advises. That is documented. It is public record. In 1987, retinol, a derivative of vitamin A, was being aggressively studied for its effect on skin aging. The research was real and it was significant. But here is what happened in parallel. As retinol entered the commercial market, older ingredients that had been used in apothecary formulas for generations, started disappearing from mainstream pharmacy shelves. Not banned, not proven harmful, just quietly replaced. Beef tallow, raw lanolin, beeswax-based preparations, fermented grain rinses, they did not vanish from the earth, they vanished from the store. The Amish did not notice. They were not shopping at those stores. This is where it gets interesting. Old order Amish women have maintained personal care routines that are in many respects identical to what American women used before the Second World War. The core of the facial routine in these communities is not exotic. It is beef tallow, sometimes lard, sometimes beeswax, combined with herbs grown in the kitchen garden. Calendula, chamomile, comfrey, rinsing with water that has had apple cider vinegar added to it. Occasionally, a raw honey application left on the face for several minutes before washing. These are not secrets. They are not ancient mysteries. They are simply things that were common before a $60 billion industry decided common was not profitable. Now, let me tell you what the science actually says, because this channel does not ask you to take anything on faith. Beef tallow is structurally similar to human sebum, which is the oil your skin naturally produces. Sebum is a complex mixture of fatty acids, including oleic acid, palmitic acid, and stearic acid. Tallow contains all three. When you apply it to skin, it does not sit on top as a barrier the way many petroleum-based products do. It absorbs. The skin recognizes it. This is not a new idea. It was standard in American pharmacopoeias well into the mid-20th century. The shift away from it was not driven by science. It was driven by the price of commodity fats versus the price of synthetic compounds and by shelf life. Tallow goes rancid. Petroleum does not. From a manufacturing standpoint, petroleum won. From a skin standpoint, the research did not disappear just because the product did. Calendula, one of the most common botanicals in Lancaster County kitchen gardens, has documented anti-inflammatory and wound healing properties. The active compounds, flavonoids, and triterpenoids have been studied specifically for their effects on skin repair. Raw honey is a mild humectant, meaning it draws moisture to the skin, and has natural antimicrobial properties that have been studied seriously enough that medical-grade honey preparations are now used in clinical wound care. Apple cider vinegar diluted has a pH close to the skin's natural acid mantle, approximately 4.5 to 5.5. Using it as a rinse supports that balance without stripping it. None of these things are miraculous. None of them will reverse decades of sun damage in a week. That is the honest thing I want to tell you directly. If you have significant photo damage, the kind of deep structural change that comes from years of unprotected sun exposure, this routine will not undo that. It is not a time machine. What it does is restore the skin's environment to one where it can function well and age more slowly from this point forward. That is a real and meaningful thing. It is just not the same as a before and after you see in a magazine, and it would be dishonest of me to pretend otherwise. What I find remarkable is not any single ingredient. It is the consistency. The woman in Lancaster County I mentioned at the beginning, 67 years old, 8 children, worked outdoors her entire adult life. I spoke with her granddaughter, who is in her 30s and lives on the edge of the community, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. She told me her grandmother has used the same basic routine since she was a teenager, handed down from her own mother. Tallow-based salve in the winter, lighter beeswax preparation in the summer, never soap on the face, always the vinegar rinse. The granddaughter estimated the monthly cost at somewhere around $3, including the apple cider vinegar. $3 a month for 50 years of continuous use. Compare that to the average American woman over 50 who spends somewhere between $100 and $300 a month on skincare products, many of which contain active ingredients that break down within months of manufacture, are stored in conditions that degrade them further, and are applied without any understanding of how they interact with each other. The Amish have no interest in that equation, and their skin shows it. There is something else going on here that I think matters as much as the ingredients, and it has to do with what the routine does not include. Modern commercial skincare for aging skin almost universally includes fragrance. Synthetic fragrance is one of the most common causes of contact dermatitis and skin sensitization, particularly in women over 50 whose skin barrier is already thinner than it was at 30. The European Union has restricted or banned hundreds of fragrance compounds that are still legal and unregulated in American products. The FDA does not require fragrance ingredients to be listed individually on labels. A product can say fragrance and contain dozens of compounds you will never know about. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is the current state of American cosmetic labeling law. Amish preparations contain no synthetic fragrance. If they smell like anything, it is the herbs or the beeswax or nothing at all. They also contain no preservatives in the modern chemical sense. Small batches made regularly, used quickly. The same logic a grandmother applied to food. Make it fresh. Use it. Do not store it for 2 years under fluorescent lights. The cumulative effect of removing all of that, the synthetic fragrance, the preservatives, the petroleum emollients, the pH disrupting surfactants, and replacing it with fats and botanicals the skin already knows how to work with, is not dramatic in week 1. In week 8, it starts to show. In month 6, it starts to turn heads. That timeline is not marketing. It is biology. Skin cell turnover in a woman over 50 takes roughly 4 to 6 weeks. You are not going to see structural change before the skin has had a chance to complete at least 1 full cycle, often 2. This is, I think, why so many women give up too soon. The modern beauty industry has trained us to expect results in 72 hours. That is not how skin works. It has never been how skin works. But 72 hours is how long a customer will wait before returning a product. So 72 hours is what the marketing promises. The Amish have no return policy. They have generational feedback. If something worked for your grandmother, your mother, and your aunts, you do not need a clinical trial with a sample size of 32 women photographed under flattering light. You have 100 years of women in the same family using the same method and looking the way they look. That is a different kind of evidence. Less precise, but longer. I want to be direct about one more thing. This channel is not anti-medicine. It is not anti-science. If your dermatologist has recommended a specific treatment for a specific condition, that is between you and your doctor. What I am questioning is not medicine, it is marketing. I am questioning a $60 billion industry that has spent 80 years telling women their natural bodies require expensive intervention and whose primary ingredient in that intervention is inadequacy. The Amish are not immune to aging. They are not immune to wrinkles. What they are immune to is the belief that their skin is a problem to be solved with the right product. And there is something in that immunity that shows quite literally on the surface. Drop your state in the comments and tell me what you spend on anti-aging products every month. I am genuinely curious about the range because I think most women would be surprised to add it up over a year. And if your grandmother used something her own mother taught her, something passed down before the drugstore took over, I want to hear about it. Those stories belong in the record. They should not disappear. If you are the kind of woman who believes real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do. Next time, the Amish hair ritual the FDA attempted to classify as drug grade in 1978. The petition, the pushback, and the reason they failed is a story you have not heard anywhere else.